There's a category of mystery that modern science genuinely hates to admit exists. Not the kind of mystery that just needs more research funding or a better microscope. The kind where our best instruments, our best historians, our best engineers, and our best doctors look at the same evidence everyone else can see and simply do not have an answer. This is a tour through some of those mysteries. Stones too heavy to move with any tool we know existed. A temple carved out of a mountain from the top down. A disease that turned 1 million people into living statues, then vanished without a trace. A signal from deep space that arrived once and was never heard again, and languages carved in stone thousands of years ago that nobody alive can read. Let's start at the bottom of an empty field in southeastern Turkey, because this is where the story of human civilization itself had to be rewritten. It's an extraordinary ancient site in southeastern Turkey, dating back somewhere between 10,500 and 12,000 years. It features huge, carved T-shaped pillars arranged in circular enclosures, decorated with mysterious animal reliefs and symbols. What's most baffling is that it was built by hunter-gatherers who didn't, or weren't supposed to, have the technology or social structure to create such sophisticated monuments. Before Göbekli Tepe was excavated, the accepted timeline of human civilization went like this. Humans settled down, started farming, and only once farming produced surplus food and stable populations did they develop the social organization needed to build large monuments. Agriculture first, monuments second. Interestingly enough, it was just a few centuries after the construction of Göbekli Tepe that there is evidence of farming and domestication of grain and animals. For some, this means that it was the need to create the structure that prompted the hunter-gatherers to settle down. That single sentence quietly flips the entire accepted order of human development on its head. The monument may have come first, and farming may have followed, because building something this large required people to stay in one place long enough to do it. And then there is the second mystery, layered on top of the first. Massive carved stones were arranged by unknown builders, yet their purpose and rituals remain lost to time. Even more puzzling, the entire site was intentionally buried for reasons still unknown. Someone deliberately covered this entire complex in thousands of tons of soil, burying their own ancestors' achievements so completely that it stayed hidden for thousands of years until a survey team stumbled across it in the 20th century. Now let's travel from Turkey's hills to Lebanon's quarries, because the next mystery is not about who built something, but about how anyone with any tools known to exist at the time moved it. In Baalbek, Lebanon, ancient builders left behind some of the world's largest stone blocks, with several weighing over 1,000 tons. These megaliths were quarried, moved, and precisely positioned to form the base of a monumental temple complex. How they accomplished such a feat without modern technology remains one of history's great engineering mysteries. 1,000 tons. For comparison, a fully loaded Boeing 747 weighs around 400 tons. Imagine moving 2.5 jumbo jets, stacked together as a single solid block of stone, across open ground, without a single piece of modern lifting equipment, and then setting that block into position with enough precision that it has remained structurally stable for roughly 2,000 years. In Baalbek, Lebanon, a 1,100-ton block sits wonkily in a nearby quarry. This detail matters enormously because it tells us something the finished temple alone cannot. There is an even larger block, abandoned mid-extraction, still sitting in the ground where the builders left it. Whatever method they used to move the blocks that did make it to the temple, they apparently gave up on this one before it was finished, which suggests the process was difficult enough, even for them, that not every attempt succeeded. Now let's go to a temple that was not built by stacking stones at all, but by removing them. The Kailasa Temple at Ellora in India was not constructed the way every other temple on this list was constructed. It was carved directly out of a single mountainside, from the top down, removing an estimated 250,000 tons of solid volcanic rock to leave behind a freestanding multi-story temple complete with courtyards, shrines, and elaborately carved sculptures, all chiseled out of what used to be solid stone. There was no margin for error, unlike a structure built block by block, where a mistake means repositioning. One piece, a mistake in a top-down rock-cut temple means an entire section of mountain is permanently, irreversibly gone. The builders had to plan the complete, finished interior architecture before they ever started removing material, and execute that plan correctly while working from the outside of a mountain inward, with no way to undo a miscalculation. Now let's cross an entire ocean, to a site 12,000 feet above sea level in the Bolivian highlands, where the stonework gets stranger still. The Puma Punku stones are gigantic, with some weighing over 100 tons. Made of andesite and red sandstone, they are some of the hardest materials to cut, yet somehow they were shaped with machine-like precision. And here's the kicker. The stones fit together so tightly that you can't even slide a razor blade between them. No mortar, no glue, just perfectly interlocking pieces. At 12,000 feet above sea level, Puma Punku's massive stones were cut and shaped with machine-like precision. Some blocks weigh hundreds of tons and interlock flawlessly. Scholars are still baffled by how such complex engineering was achieved without metal tools or written plans. The specific H-shaped blocks found at Puma Punku are some of the most discussed pieces in the entire site, precisely because every single one of them is cut to almost identical dimensions, as though they were manufactured from a single template rather than carved individually by hand. As if the perfect stone cuts weren't strange enough, there are also the unexplainable Puma Punku drill holes, circular indentations that look like they were made with high-speed drills. At its peak, Puma Punku and Tiwanaku City supported 400,000 people and had a very extensive infrastructure. By 1000 CE, the culture abruptly ended for reasons that are still unknown today. A city of 400,000 people with infrastructure sophisticated enough to support that population simply ends, and the people who built it leave behind almost no written explanation of why. Now let's move from stones to gears, because the next object on this list does something even stranger than survive for thousands of years. It demonstrates a level of mechanical sophistication that, for over a millennium afterward, nobody on Earth was able to replicate. Pulled from a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901, the Antikythera Mechanism is a corroded bronze gadget dating from around 150 to 100 BC that includes over 30 interlocking gears, dials, and pointers tracking the sun, moon, eclipses, and maybe even planets with eerie accuracy. One of the greatest mysteries of ancient Greece, the Antikythera Mechanism, has been called the world's first analog computer. And the kicker is that nothing this mechanically complex pops up again for over 1,000 years. Think about the comparative timeline here. This level of precision mechanical engineering existed in the ancient Mediterranean world roughly 2,000 years ago, then simply disappeared from the historical record for over 1,000 years, until clogmaking in medieval Europe eventually rediscovered comparable levels of gear complexity independently. Believed to be the world's first analog computer, it could predict astronomical events and eclipses. However, its exact functions and the full scope of its capabilities remain unclear, leaving both historians and engineers in awe. We found the object. We can study every gear. We still do not fully agree on everything it was originally capable of calculating or who specifically had the combined astronomical and mechanical knowledge required to design it. Now let's shift entirely from ancient engineering to something far more recent and, in its own way, just as unsettling. Diseases that appeared without warning, devastated entire populations, and then vanished as mysteriously as they arrived. Between 1915 and 1926, around the same time the influenza pandemic ravaged the world, a sleeping disease claimed the lives of more than 500,000 people. Known scientifically as Encephalitis Lethargica, this disease left sufferers in a statue-like condition, unable to speak or move their bodies. This disease turned into a full-blown epidemic around the world in the 1920s. The mysterious part of this epidemic was that no one knew how it started or what caused it. This affected more than 1 million people and led to an estimated 500,000 deaths. Modern medicine has continued investigating this disease for over a century, and the honest, comparative scientific answer remains genuinely unresolved. Theories around infection, environmental toxins, catatonia, and autoimmune encephalitis have been proposed. A recent detailed clinical review went back through original hospital case files from the actual era of the epidemic, comparing real patient records against modern diagnostic frameworks. And even with that rigor, no single theory has been able to fully and conclusively explain what encephalitis lethargica actually was. Although the disease mysteriously disappeared in 1927, scientists remain puzzled over its origin and cause, as well as how it can be transmitted. The disease that turned 1 million people into living statues simply stopped happening, almost as suddenly as it began, and we still do not have a confirmed explanation for either its arrival or its departure. There is a more modern echo of this same kind of medical mystery, and it involves people whose job is supposed to be among the most carefully monitored on Earth. Starting sometime in 2016, diplomatic personnel in Cuba began to experience a weird range of health problems, such as memory loss, hearing loss, and nausea. This malady was then known as Havana Syndrome, and it was seemingly ruining the health of diplomats, officers, and members of their families who were nearby at the time of these attacks. Members have felt this illness outside the White House and in several countries around the world, like China, Austria, Bulgaria, France, Georgia, Poland, Serbia, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. U.S. officials estimate there have been at least 1,500 cases of Havana Syndrome. That is not a handful of isolated incidents. That is a sustained, decade-long pattern affecting personnel across multiple continents, with competing official explanations that have shifted significantly over time. In 2024, a declassified intelligence study report stated that the most probable cause could be pulsed electromagnetic energy that could penetrate through building walls. Another report by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine stated in 2020 that weaponized microwaves could also be the cause of this syndrome. This is the comparative reality worth noting honestly. Two separate, serious scientific and intelligence assessments, conducted years apart, have pointed toward broadly similar but not identical explanations involving directed energy, while other government reviews have concluded there is insufficient evidence to confirm any single external cause across all reported cases. The mystery has not been definitively solved. It has been narrowed, debated, and contested, which is a meaningfully different outcome than resolved. Now, for something stranger still, a phenomenon involving not human behavior, but animal behavior that has resisted explanation for decades. Located near Dumbarton in Scotland, the Overtoun Bridge was constructed in 1895. What makes this seemingly ordinary bridge so creepy is the inexplicable phenomenon of dogs leaping. Over the years, the Overtoun Bridge in Dumbarton, Scotland, has become synonymous with incidents where dogs have been compelled to jump off ever since the 1950s. Multiple investigations into this site over the decades have proposed competing explanations, ranging from the scent of mink living beneath the bridge triggering a hunting instinct in dogs, to the specific architecture of the bridge's parapet creating an optical effect that makes the drop appear less dangerous than it actually is to an animal looking through it. Neither explanation has been definitively proven to account for every documented incident, and the site continues to attract repeated cases that local authorities have had to actively warn pet owners about. Now let's move to the realm of language itself, because some of history's most direct testimony, carved in stone by the people who lived it, remains completely unreadable to us today. The Indus Valley civilization flourished for centuries, boasting advanced urban planning and impressive architecture. Yet, around 1900 BCE, it mysteriously declined and vanished. The reasons, climate change, invasion, disease, or internal strife, remain hotly debated. Adding to the enigma, the civilization's script is still undeciphered, making it difficult to unlock their secrets. Think about the scale of what this means. The Indus Valley civilization built some of the most sophisticated urban planning of the ancient world, with standardized brick sizes, advanced drainage systems, and organized city grids that predate comparable Roman engineering by thousands of years. They left behind thousands of inscribed seals and tablets, and despite over a century of attempts by professional linguists and cryptographers using every modern computational tool available, nobody has successfully translated a single confirmed sentence of their written language. We have their cities, we have their writing. We simply cannot read what they were trying to say. Easter Island presents a similar puzzle on a smaller but equally frustrating scale. The Rongorongo script, a set of glyphs carved onto wooden tablets by the island's Rapa Nui people, remains undeciphered to this day. And the situation is made worse by the fact that so few authentic tablets survive. The population that could have explained the script's meaning was devastated by disease and slave raids in the 19th century before any systematic linguistic study could be completed. Whatever knowledge existed about how to read these glyphs was largely lost, along with the people who carried it. Now let's turn briefly to a single, anomalous moment that radio astronomy has never been able to repeat. The WOW signal, detected by a radio telescope in Ohio in 1977, was a brief, intensely powerful burst of radio energy that matched almost exactly what scientists had theorized an artificial extraterrestrial signal might look like. It lasted just over a minute. It has never been detected again, despite decades of follow-up observation of the exact same patch of sky. The honest, comparative scientific position here is genuinely humble. Most astronomers believe a natural, if unusual, astrophysical explanation is more likely than an artificial one, simply because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and a single unrepeated detection does not meet that bar. But no specific natural phenomenon has been conclusively identified as the source either. The signal remains, technically and honestly, unexplained. Now let's look at one final category of mystery, the kind involving real people whose fate has simply never been confirmed. Amelia Earhart disappeared over the Pacific Ocean in 1937 during an attempt to circumnavigate the globe by air, despite decades of search expeditions, sonar surveys of the seafloor, and competing theories ranging from a straightforward crash and sinking to a controversial claim that she survived as a castaway on a remote island. No definitive physical confirmation of her aircraft's final resting place has ever been universally accepted by the broader research community. The most likely explanation remains the simplest one, that her plane ran out of fuel and went down in open ocean, but the absence of confirmed wreckage means the case technically remains open, generation after generation. D.B. Cooper presents an even stranger case because here the mystery is not what happened to evidence, but who the person actually was in the first place. In 1971, a man using that alias hijacked a commercial airplane, extorted a ransom in cash, and then parachuted out of the aircraft mid-flight over the Pacific Northwest, vanishing entirely. Despite an enormous, decades-long FBI investigation, his true identity has never been confirmed, and whether he survived the jump at all remains genuinely unknown. A portion of the ransom money was eventually found along a riverbank years later, proving the hijacking itself was real and not some kind of hoax, but that single piece of physical evidence has never led investigators to the man himself. So what connects all of these mysteries together across so many different categories, continents, and centuries? The honest, comparative answer is not that ancient people possessed secret advanced technology lost to history, nor is it that every modern medical anomaly has a mundane, fully explainable cause we simply haven't found yet. The honest answer sits in the uncomfortable middle. Our historical and scientific methods are genuinely powerful, capable of dating a temple to within a few centuries, capable of mapping every gear inside a 2,000-year-old bronze mechanism, capable of tracking the symptoms of a disease across 1 million documented patients. But those same methods reach a hard limit when the evidence itself is incomplete. A buried site with no surviving written record of why it was built. A disease that disappeared before modern virology existed to properly study it. A language with too few surviving examples to ever be statistically deciphered. A man who vanished into a forest and was never seen again. Mystery, in each of these cases, is not a failure of science. It is what remains honestly unresolved after rigorous investigation has done everything currently possible. And the only thing left is to wait for either new evidence or a new method capable of reading what the old evidence has been quietly holding on to for centuries, or in some cases, for millennia.